Good evening. Thank you for joining us tonight on the Cameron Peak Fire live meeting tonight. My name is Brandolyn Karen. I'm a Public Information Officer with the Southwest Area Incident Management Team Number 3 under the command of Incident Commander Dave Gesser. Tonight's going to be a little bit different. We're going to start out with Incident Commander Dave Gesser giving us some information. Then we'll move on to Planning Operations Trainee Corey Carlson. And after that, we'll move into live Q&A. So if you have any questions, put those in the comments. We'll do our best to get to as many as we can. So with that, we'll start with Incident Commander Dave Gesser.
Hey, good evening. Incident Commander Dave Gesser with Southwest Area Team 3. First off, I wanted to say current stats on the fire is 8% contained. We're sitting at 102,596 acres. And right now we have approximately about 1,000 people on the fire itself. And then we also, with that, it's a mix of hot shot crews, engines, heavy equipment, as I said the other night, but we also have 5 Type 1 helicopters, which are the bigger, larger type helicopters. We have 2 medium helicopters and then 2 light helicopters. And most of the time the light helicopters are used for recon use, and they have like a lot smaller bucket on there as well. As we've talked about in the past, this fire currently, with the size of it, is just over 237 miles. And that's on the map miles. That's not taking into account the terrain and features in there. So the folks on the ground and the operations that you'll hear with Corey have really focused in on a lot of those key values being, the communities out there, and really working on trying to contain a lot of the area around those values and then working out further as they can go in there. Yesterday's smoke that you saw was up in the thumb. And with that, basically, not a lot of growth in there, but it was 70 acres. So things in there were pretty moderated by the heavy use they were using with helicopters and the personnel in there working. And Corey will talk to that some more here. Thank you.
Good evening. Corey Carlson, Planning Operations Trainee for Southwest Area Team 3. So I'll kind of go clockwise around the horn and try to be as specific as possible about what we've been doing on this fire for the last couple days. So I'll start in Division Alpha Zulu, which starts about here and goes up into the thumb a little bit. So this area right here is still, this is inaccessible ground. We've been monitoring this by air. It's not showing much heat. It's not showing much activity, but we just haven't been able to get boots on the ground in here. So we'll continue to monitor this by air. We'll continue to assess this, and at some point, when we feel comfortable, we could possibly show this contained. This right here is contained, so this is black on the map. This is 4% of the containment, of the 8% containment. This is all looking really good, and we're currently beginning to work from this 103 road back towards this contained line. So we did have a crew in here. It's really, really steep. They call it the cliff band. But we did have folks right in on this cliff band, just kind of cold trailing, looking for hot spots, trying to get a little more containment in this area. So I didn't choose the best color markers today, but this is purple. And what I did with this is I'm trying to show you areas that we've worked in the last couple days. This doesn't mean it's contained. It's just areas where we've worked the fire's edge, going direct, and when I say direct, that means using a combination of hand crews with hand tools, chainsaws, shovels, Pulaskis, that type of stuff, or bulldozers, masticators. We got a whole host of heavy equipment that we use. So this line right here is a mix of that. It's a mix of direct line construction using hand crews and heavy equipment. This little piece they're trying to work out. I know it looks small on the map, but it's very challenging. It's still about a mile across here. So just kind of inaccessible ground, steep. A lot of it's on slopes where dozers can't operate without rolling. So they're trying to assess how to close this gap right here. This right here is purple as well. So again, a combination of direct fire line construction using hand crews and heavy equipment all the way around to here. This is where it gets a little more interesting. This is where we've had the majority of our fire activity right here. Yesterday we got about 70 acres of growth in that area. We, the smoke column, a much smaller smoke column than we saw a week and a half ago, but nonetheless, quite a bit of activity up here, only about 70 acres of growth, but it is starting to heat up in there. The fuels are drying, and some of the heavy fuels on the ground are beginning to consume. So this is a really challenging piece. We're not able to get any heavy equipment from here over to here. It's just too steep for a variety of reasons. We're actually even having trouble getting folks or crews walked out to here. If I come around here, this green line, so this is a secondary option that we found today. Potentially, it's an old road system. We're trying to access some heavy equipment and dozers to get in this area to try to button up this head where we're not able to get folks in. So this hasn't been worked, but it's being scouted really hard. It will continue to be scouted hard and see if we can't make some progress in there. This is a little piece of dozer line that connects in off the Kilpecker line. So we connected that into the fire's edge, and we pushed dozer line down here. I can't see the road number, but it looks like the 297 road right here. So this is direct line construction with heavy equipment. We did send a hotshot crew in off this dozer line, and they got right on this fire's edge, and they started just barely working the edge of this, trying to get direct fire line construction on this. So at some point late this afternoon, fire activity picked up enough to where they had to get out of there for their own safety. They weren't threatened or anything, but just the increase in fire activity, the remoteness, the steepness of this, it was just best to get them out before fire activity picked up and put them in a dangerous situation. So this will continue to be a high priority, trying to button up this piece and trying to put this contingency line in here along the Kilpecker line and this 517 Alpha Bravo Echo road system. So in Kinnickinnick and then this little triangle here, this is all looking really good. We've had engines in on this Highway 14 corridor in this area and all across the 14 corridor for weeks. Even when it snowed, these guys were in there working in around structures, mopping up the fire's edge in and around structures, continuing to do more prep work in and around structures, more assessments, and putting in hose, pumps, whatever it was going to take to make sure these values at risk in here are secure. So that's all looking really good. I know this is kind of a triangle of unburned, but it looks really good in here. So continuing down the 14 corridor, all these values in here are looking really good. They're secure. There's not a lot of activity going in here. We don't feel comfortable putting any containment in this area, even though it's looking really good. And a big part of that is because we still have fire activity up here. We just don't know what this thing wants to do. We've had some change in winds. We had a north wind yesterday. We had a southeast wind today. We're looking at stronger winds towards the weekend out of the southwest. So we just want to keep an eye on this, for a little bit longer. If this was to pop out and push down a little bit, although things look really good in here, we don't feel comfortable putting containment in there. But I want to assure people that things do look good in the Highway 14 corridor all the way to the Pingree Park Road. So back in here, this is the other 4% of containment we got. This is from Glen Echo, Rustic, Archie's Resort type area, all the way back to the Pingree Park Road is contained. So between this piece of 4% contained, this piece of 4% contained, that's our 8% containment. Some good news, I'm hoping to share tomorrow, is from the Pingree Park Road and Division Tango all the way down to the Buckhorn area. This is the area where we had the big run a week and a half ago, and where it crossed the Pingree Park Road into the Monument Gulch, Jack's Camp area. Things are looking really good in here. We're hoping within the next 24 hours we'll be able to show this contained, which is going to be a huge win for all of us. This is a significant chunk of ground. It's I could count the squares, but it's about 8 miles. So that's been a lot of good work. Most of that work was done by hand crews. A little bit of heavy equipment in there, but we've had over 200, 300 people work in this area every day for the last week and a half, and even before then. So that's looking really good. As we leave Buckhorn and come in, to this uniform country, pretty challenging ground as well. We've had a couple crews in here, about 60 to 80 people working in here, and they've continued to just use a bunch of direct fire line tactics with hand crews, and working the edge where they can, putting out hot spots, looking for heat, putting hand line in where needed, and they've made it all the way in and around this Comanche Reservoir area, and things are looking really good there as well. They did have some heavy equipment in here, and while the crews are in here, we're going to go ahead and construct a little bit of dozer line from this black edge down to some existing roads and trail systems, and we're going to try to put a secondary contingency line, open up some of these roads, make it a little more accessible to kind of a second line of defense for these values in and around here. So we feel good with this here, but we just want to add a little more insurance here while we have the crews and the heavy equipment in there. Once we pull out of here, it's hard to get back in there. So that's a good portion of the northern part of the fire. Down here in Whiskey, this is a piece that's come on to Rocky Mountain National Park. It's been pretty quiet for a while. We have had some smoke popping up in the Chapin Pass, Chapin Creek area for the last 2 or 3 days. We've used helicopters with buckets to put water on those areas, and actually today we ran buckets of water on the smokes popping up, and by midday there was no smoke showing. So the helicopters went back to the airport, they sat down, and we didn't see anything else pop up in there the rest of the day. So tomorrow's a new day, and we'll continue to assess all this stuff down here. As smokes pop up, we will put aviation up there, and we'll try to knock the punch out of some of the heat in there. Just one go back up in here. We ran 5 Type 1 helicopters on this area of activity all day today, all day yesterday, and all day the day before. We used a combination of water and retardant with the helicopters, and I would say on average between 30 to 40,000 gallons of either water or retardant were put on just this area of heat over the last 3 days. So about 120,000 gallons of water and retardant, and we still have fire activity. So that shows. We get a lot of questions about why don't we drop water on it, why don't we drop retardant on it. That stuff, it slows the fire activity down. It helps us a lot, but really, it doesn't put the fire out. At some point, we need to secure this piece with either some sort of direct line construction, or we need some sort of help from Mother Nature, rain, snow. All those things are really what's going to help put this fire out. The water and retardant helps. It buys us time, but it's not the end solution. So getting into some of these other communities, there's a lot of stuff in here. I'm not going to get every community by name. I know that. We're doing some work on the Manhattan Road. We're using a combination of roads. Some of these X's you see in here, these are dozer lines that kind of connect roads together, just giving us some additional containment features. This Manhattan Road, all the way to the Dead Man Road, all the way around. We have the equipment, we have some crews, and we continue to just work these areas as a second line of defense. If this fire wants to get over our proposed containment lines over the Kilpecker line and move this way, we're going to be here and try to be ready for it. So Dead Man's Road, Manhattan Road, all being worked by crews, engines, heavy equipment. Up in Crystal Lakes, Red Feather, Glacier View, and all these other communities that are in and around that I'm going to miss the name for. We have folks scattered all over these places. Some of these purple lines I put in here, we're constructing dozer line on forest land in and around these communities. So we're trying to put a box around these communities, all over the place, as well as some of the scattered in-holdings and some of the scattered structures in and about here. We're doing assessments on those, structure assessments, structure triage, determining what kind of work all these values need. So when I say structure assessments, we send folks in there with iPads, and we have computer programs where we collect a bunch of data on the structure. What kind of roof does it have? Is it tile or shake shingle? Is it stucco or is it wood siding? All that stuff factors into what makes this structure defensible, how much work we're going to have to put into it, and then when we go to implement the work, that dictates, how much work we need to do around that structure. And some of the implementation is clearing hazardous fuels around the area. Some of it's putting structure wrap around some of the buildings, which, kind of is a barrier to fire. Some of it's putting sprinkler systems up with pumps and water that we can turn on to kind of wet over the area. So all that's kind of structure protection methods that we use. So we're doing that all over the place. As we get down into here, Storm Mountain, Cedar Park, the Retreat, Glen Haven, Estes Park, Falls River Corridor, all the same kind of stuff. We're doing more of the assessments on all these communities and not as much implementation of the structure stuff. So we're gathering the data, determining what it would take to do that kind of work, getting the equipment, potentially ordered, or identifying what equipment that we already have on the incident that we can move down there, should this fire want to come at these communities. We're feeling really confident about these communities, but we're gathering the data anyway. We're putting a plan together for all these communities, should we have to put it in play. And even if it's not this time, if there's a fire, next time or years from now, hopefully we have some sort of protection plan for these communities that we can, give to them to help the next team or the next time we have a fire in and around this area. So I'm hoping that I gave you enough detail to kind of give you a good overview of what we're doing out here. A lot of work. Dave mentioned 237 miles, and that's just a perimeter. We have all kinds of additional lines going in and work going in all over the place. So with that, end of report. Thanks.
All right, thank you. So if you're just joining us, we just heard from our incident commander, Dave Gesser, and planning operations trainee, Corey Carlson. So at this time, we're going to move into the portion of the evening where those two speakers are available to answer questions. So we'll get started. If you haven't done so and have a question, please drop those into the comments. So we'll start with our incident commander. First question is, can you please explain the fire management team's setup and why they changed to different fires?
Yeah, so the teams, both between what we call a Type 1 team and a Type 2 team, they're equal in the personnel, which is about 58 personnel, and that takes into account, what we call command and general staff. So we have a planning section, a logistics section, a safety, liaisons, which go out and work with the public. So there's a wide variety, our PIOs, public information officers. And then the difference in there, a lot of it is based on complexity, looking at those fires. But anymore, between the Type 1 and Type 2 teams, there's really no difference in the structure of the teams. And then as we talked about the other night, a lot of it for teams coming in and out, it's basically just based on that timing that we have. We got, it's typically 14 days that a team or resources go out onto a fire line. And they're long hours that they're working, a lot of work, especially the folks on the ground, carrying packs with up to 45 pounds on their backs, hiking miles out there. So at the end of that 14 days, you can be extended up to 21 days, but we look at that pretty hard because there's a lot of fatigue that goes into that as well. And so the fire season, you know, for us, especially with our team, we start back in the southwest early. And then we move up to the northern country as time goes on. But that fatigue accumulates over time.
All right, next question. The fire has changed from 4% to 8% contained. What factors contributed to this change in status? And then what locations was the line constructed and how was it secured?
So it's a very good question. As Corey pointed out earlier, you know, when we took over the fire, they had the 4% containment sitting here. And a lot of that is based on, you know, folks actually getting on the ground, being able to go direct, talking of securing those areas by feeling with their hands for hot spots, their cold trailing, constructing that line with water, mopping up. And what I mean by mopping up is actually putting water into those hot areas, stirring that material around to where they extinguish that. The other 4%, as Corey mentioned, is sitting in this area here. And that's just due to a lot of good work by the folks on the ground, really getting in there, being able to go direct on that. You know, this here was some pretty good country, but it was able to get folks in there and really work that pretty hard. And it took several days to do that, but they were able to get that containment. And as Corey said, you know, again here, this section in here, within the next 24 hours, we'll probably have that same containment. You know, we get, like you said, there were several hundred people in here working this. As we got feeling comfortable, we shifted those resources and then still have resources in here patrolling that area, looking for any additional hot spots that may appear. And that's why, you know, it takes a little bit of time before we call something contained, because we want to make sure that there is no chance for that fire to escape.
All right. Next question, is the fire moving towards Storm Mountain?
So at this time, no, it is not moving towards Storm Mountain. So Storm Mountain's sitting over here, and with what the work the folks on the ground have done out here, basically working all this country and coming around the corner and working out to here, we've started to eliminate that threat coming out towards Storm Mountain. Our biggest concerns that we have and moving forward is this country in here. Really, there's not a lot of growth movement in here. We're not seeing a lot of hot material in this area with the IR flights that we've had, which is infrared. So with the flights in here, this country is pretty rugged. We can't get machines in here. We can't get people in here. A lot of dead and down material, the beetle kill. It's just too rugged of country, and that's why we talked about there's 237 miles of perimeter around this, but 80 miles of that is what we're really focused on to eliminate that threat. But at this time, there is no threat to Storm Mountain.
All right, thank you. Now we'll do some questions with Planning Operations Trainee Corey Carlson. So the first question, what work is being done in the Long Draw Reservoir area?
So Long Draw area is just we're hot spotting, cold trailing, putting in a line where needed, mopping up any hot areas. Looking really good in there. You know, potentially could show containment in there. We want to connect some of these dots first before we just start throwing a little bit of containment here and there. So as we continue to connect some dots, we'll show more containment in those areas, but looking good.
So a second part to that question is, do you know if the Long Draw Ranger Cabin and Campground burned?
I don't believe so, no. Yeah, I don't know 100% on those values, but I don't believe there was any values lost in this area at all.
Okay. Next question. It looks like there are hot spots pretty much on or just west of the Kilpecker line. Are you able to use that line, or is it too dangerous with the fire that close?
So on yesterday's map, we had some areas of heat and spots out here. We ended up determining that those were false. That comes from some infrared data that we get. After looking at that area a little closer from a helicopter, we determined that this is the true perimeter edge right here. So it is very close to the Kilpecker line. It is very close, We do have a lot of fire activity there. So, we're doing our best to try to get around as much of this as possible and to take as much of this option of it, hitting the Kilpecker line. That's why we're looking at this line really hard. This line is inside the Kilpecker line, and it's just just one extra area that we could potentially corral this thing before it wants to move that way.
How is Glen Echo and the properties directly behind it being protected?
Yep, so Glen Echo, Rustic, Indian Meadows, all looks really good. We got containment right here behind, right kind of at the Glen Echo area. Like I said, this all looks really good as well. It's possible we could show containment here. We just haven't yet. We want to give it a little more time just based on the values in there. The work is still ongoing in there. So, but yeah, everything looks really good in that area.
Next question, there's a couple parts to it. What is happening in Rocky Mountain National Park? It seems the fire is closer to Fairchild Mountain and the Saddle. And they're wondering if there are boots on the ground there in Rocky Mountain National Park.
So there's no boots on the ground on the fire's edge. This is all being monitored by the air. We do have a whole contingent of folks down here doing all sorts of work. We have people in the park observing up at the Alpine Visitor Center areas, all over the park, just keeping eyes on this and watching it. Like I said, there's pretty much one smoke popping up in Chapin Pass, Chapin Creek area, and we were putting the helicopters on it until it kind of disappeared. And we've been doing that each day. Kind of towards the heat of the day, it pops up, we hit it with helicopters, and it goes away for a while. So we'll continue to do that. But no boots on the ground, pretty inaccessible country in there to be putting folks.
Could you please elaborate on the planned location for fire line in the Glen Haven area that was discussed in this morning's briefing?
Okay, so basically what the plan is in Glen Haven, if this fire was to move towards these communities, we would have a plan in place and we'd have equipment in place to do some indirect fire line construction on some strategic points in and around these communities. So I could probably talk all night about just where all this stuff is. As if there's a lot of stuff in here. It's pretty challenging ground. There's a lot of scattered stuff, but there is a plan to just go put some strategic lines in and around and provide structure protection based on a lot of different options of where this fire could go, where it would potentially impact first, and we have a lot of different options for that. But like Dave mentioned, Storm Mountain, Glen Haven, these are all kind of in the same boat. We're not really expecting fire to move this way at this point. There's always a possibility, but it's very small, and we don't envision any impacts to this area. But we do have a plan in place to implement it if needed.
So kind of speaking to that Glen Haven area, and you might have covered this a little bit just now, but what factors determine you putting that plan into play for the Glen Haven retreat area?
So we have some things called management action points, and they're lines on a map based on geographic features or fuel conditions, or there's a lot of tundra out in here, areas that won't burn. So it's similar to like an evacuation plan. If the fire was to move and reach one of these management action points, that would trigger us putting our plan into place. So that's basically in a nutshell. It's we have trigger points basically that if the fire was to hit this trigger point or move in this direction, we've put a lot of thought and time into what kind of action that would prompt.
All right, next question, 2 parts to this. It's a little bit of a longer one. Can you please address what you are doing to protect both the neighborhoods in Poudre City and the Archers Resort area from experiencing relighting of the previous fire edge or from a new run into the area from the Thumb on the north side of the highway?
Yep, so that, what was the name of it? Archers
Resort area?
Yeah, so this is the piece that's contained. I believe Archer's Resorts in and along this corridor here. Like I said, things are looking really good in there. Even though this is showing contained, that doesn't mean we've abandoned this piece. There's 1,000 firefighters on this fire, and they're spread all over the place. There's not any of this stuff along the 14 corridor or things that we can get to by roads that doesn't have firefighters on there. So they're constantly patrolling. If smokes pop up, they put them out, and we have a heavy presence in there. As far as a thumb, I believe pushing this way. So we have this piece work really good. We're feeling really comfortable about it. The further we can get around the tip of this thumb, it takes a lot of, potential for this to come back down here. In and around the values along the 14 corridor, this fire's edge is looking really good. All the values in and around the 14 corridor have been prepped around, and there's all kinds of structure protection measures in place in there if this thing wanted to move in that direction.
And the second part to that question is, how long do you think personnel will be stationed in that area of Archer's Resort in Poudre City?
A long time, I would say. This fire is a long way from being over. Even when we have containment around, the majority of the areas that we can access, that doesn't mean it ends there. We're going to be in here for the long haul, we're just going to ask for your patience and realize that that's a lot of ground in here. There's a lot of values at risk in here, and we have to spend the appropriate amount of time to ensure those values are protected, and we're committed to doing that.
All right, thank you, Corey. We'll bring back up Incident Commander Dave Gesser. So are you still continuing air operations over the thumb area in the haze?
Yeah, so, as you heard several times within this, we've had 5 heavy helicopters, which is our Type 1 helicopters, work in this entire area for the last 3 days. So the air support is continuing on that and will continue as we can. The haze we're getting is from other fires from around the area, not so much anything with this fire. But one of the things I did want to address is, even though, as Corey said, we start getting containment around this, there's still green pockets throughout other areas in here, and you're going to continue to see smoke on this fire for probably months until we actually start to see that snow and a lot more precip. So even though we have containment, things are getting secured, you're still going to see that smoke. So I just wanted to make the public aware that you will continue to see that.
All right, next question. Not really seeing them on this map. They might be referencing our map from this morning, but they're asking, what do the black dots stand for on all the roads, such as Buckhorn Canyon, 44H, and southern side roads, such as Ballard, Crystal Mountain, etc.?
Yeah, so we took those off of this map because it made it pretty busy, but those black dots you were seeing are what we call drop points. And that's for a reference for our firefighters to meet at a location or for us to drop supplies off for them. So if they call in to what we're calling the incident command post and are asking for hose or pumps, things like that, and they want them dropped off at a specific location, they give us that drop point number. So you'll see them scattered throughout, along with the blue dots as well. And the blue dots are more of that water, where they can get water at.
All right, the next question, what can we expect with the fire behavior over the next 7 to 10 days?
Oh, that's a good question. It's what we're starting to see is another system starting to set up coming into the weekend. And so the temperatures, we're starting to see the temperatures are going to be dropping down into the 60s. The RHs are coming up a little bit, so that helps with fire activity. But we are starting to get a little bit of the wind increase coming into Saturday. But we are also getting more cloud cover, so we're expecting that starting tomorrow, actually, up to about a 60% cloud cover. And so that helps moderate some of that fire behavior. But with the winds, we will see that 16 to 20 mile an hour winds. It's not sustained, but a lot of this area, as well as we saw with the north wind we had, is shaded by the ridges. And so a lot of that wind will just go over the top of that. So that's why we're really focusing on trying to get around this. So, you know, you'll start to see some fire activity decrease with some of them higher RHs, cloud cover, and lower temperatures as well. But then with the winds, you could see a little bit more increase in some activity.
Next question is, what do the firefighters need from us, being the community?
So basically, you know, our firefighters are taken care of, and we get this question a lot, so it's a really good question. As I mentioned, within the team, we have the logistics section, as I was talking about, that they're taken care of as far as food, all the supplies that they need out on the line. A big thing you can do is, you know, the thank yous. The signs put out in places where they can see them, knowing that people really appreciate what they're doing. And then, you know, we get a lot of people asking about donations. And what we suggest with that is more so for the Red Cross or for some of the shelters. We have a lot of people currently out of their homes that could probably use that. More so than our firefighters, because they're fed, you know, 3 times a day. They got all the supplies that they're needed, and we take care of the fires really well out there.
Next question is 2 parts in regard to aviation. So why only helicopters? Are larger fixed-wing tankers simply not available for this fire, or are they still not appropriate for the terrain?
So great question again, and they're not that effective in this terrain. So, you know, that retardant in the terrain that they're in, they have to be up so high that retardant doesn't penetrate the canopy. And so the retardant is, you know, hanging up into that canopy, as to where the helicopters can get more accuracy by hovering and being able to drop that load all in one shot. So it penetrates down through into the ground. So that's why we're focusing mainly with the helicopters.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
We'll bring Corey Carlson back up. Is the fire line south of 14 about to be contained?
Yes, so the 14 corridor is looking really good. I would say that we're not too far off from showing containment along most of the 14 corridor.
What is the distance between the 2 black lines on the north end of the thumb?
Miles. That's all I'll say. I would say 3 to 4 miles is between these 2 black lines, and that's not just flat ground. This is the Rocky Mountains, and this is big country, probably some of the biggest country out there. So it's not only is it miles, but it's super steep. It's high elevation. It's very difficult to traverse this stuff. So looks great on the map. You know, it's nice and flat and stuff. But yeah, it's you know, I mentioned that crew that was in there working. They barely, you know, you can see right here. That's probably being generous with the country that they worked all day today.
Next question is, how close is the fire to the river south of 14 between Archers and Glen Echo?
Yeah, so it varies. You know, there's areas where it's right there, and then as you can see, as we move into this area where it's contained, you know, it's pretty far off the river. So, you know, it's basically in and out of the river in areas along this 14 corridor, and then it leaves that river corridor here to Pingree, where we've shown containment.
Next question is, there are some cabins in the Pingree area a little east of the CSU Mountain campus. How is that area looking?
Looking real good. You know, we have firefighters. Basically, we're bedding down some firefighters at night on the grounds of the CSU campus outside. You know, it's an area where we meet and talk and get together and stuff like that. So we wouldn't put folks in there and have them sleep there if things weren't looking good there and all around. So yeah, there's mix of cabins and stuff everywhere, but everywhere from here on around is looking really good. Very little heat along the edges anywhere. So we feel safe putting folks in there and even having them sleep sleep in these areas just outside the fire's edge.
So the next question, and especially for folks who may have joined us late, can you go back and just explain the different markings you made around the fire perimeter, as well as explaining what the different symbols on the map mean, such as the brackets and the backwards parentheses?
Yep, so basically there's two areas on the fire where we've shown containment. This fire is 8% contained, and 4% is from here to here in the black marker. The other 4% is from here to here in the black marker. And the rest of these lines, I just used the wrong color. I used purple, and it probably looks like black. But this purple stuff here is areas that we're feeling pretty good about. It's areas where we've had a mixture of crews and heavy equipments working for several days now. Using direct fire line tactics right on the fire's edge, eliminating any further spread. So up in the thumb area, these areas that I'm showing, they don't connect all the way, and there's a variety of reasons. Some of these areas, like here, we were just able to access this pretty easily from this existing road right here. We're able to put dozer line down to the fire's edge, and then staying right on the fire's edge, we were able to push dozer line down to connect into another road. Some of these other areas are a little more challenging. This stuff on this side is super steep, super difficult access, and it's a mixture of dozer line right here where they could access the Green Ridge Road. They were able to push dozer line in both directions. Down here, we have a hand crew working basically what they call the cliff band, just super steep country trying to piece these pieces together. This piece is really challenging. I know it doesn't look like it on the map, but unable to get dozers to connect this piece. So they're currently trying with some crews to kind of connect the dots. They just haven't been able to work this whole piece to where I could show purple on the map. And this is our trouble area. This is where the fire activity is currently on the fire, and just not able to get firefighters right on that fire's edge because of the activity.
Thank you, Corey. We'll bring back up our incident commander.
Yeah, and Corey was getting involved with explaining that. So I'll just a little bit go into the symbols that you had asked about. So these symbols here are what we're calling division breaks. And so it's a piece of ground that a division group supervisor is in charge of that has several pieces of equipment, engines and things like that are working that piece of ground. So as you go around, as you see, you got the breaks here, and then you got the division Zulu, and then a break here. These are what we're called branches. So we've broken the fire into 3 branches, and what that does for us, you've all been seeing Corey as an operations trainee, but we have a total of 7 operations chiefs on this fire. And so these branches are broke out into 3 branches. So we have an operations branch chief that is in charge of that branch that supervises those divisions that it's broke out to. And that's for that span of control, so that we have that out there in the field as well. A few things that I just wanted to bring up and talk about real quick was, we're putting a lot of focus in here. Into the thumb is what we're calling it, and into the kill pecker. Our biggest challenge that we have is, again, going direct in this. If this does happen to cross that kill pecker, that's where Corey was talking about the external lines out here that they're working pretty hard on. We're really focused on that because of the values out there. If this were to cross, we're going to be looking at really engaging pretty heavy out here. Folks that are out there, then we're looking at some more evacuations, some voluntary evacuations in areas. But for now, we have there's a decent degree of confidence within this area here that we're going to be able to pick things up, whether it's direct or whether it's utilizing this line that Corey was talking about. But for the folks that are currently, evacuated or in voluntary evacuations, it's going to be a little while there. You know, we're trying to work and get through some things, really button up some areas so that we can start letting folks back in. But please be patient with us. I know the sheriffs are working with us really hard to be able to get folks back in there, and we're working hard with the folks we have on this fire to be able to do that. But just have that patience is what I ask. Thank you.
All right, I know there's still questions coming in and we may not have gotten to them all. We do have public information officers watching those. We will go back through. If you're watching this after the fact, feel free to still put questions in there. Give us a call, send us an email, and we'll do the best we can to get you those answers. If you're looking for more information, you can always keep an eye on InciWeb. That link is at the top of this video. And then from there, you can link to other agencies that we partner with and other things like our story map. If you haven't seen that, check it out. It's got some great information on there. And with that, I'd like to thank you again for joining us tonight and have a good evening.